Cool. Well, hello everyone. My name is Brad Bailey, aka Coach Cheeri0z, and welcome to How to Coach Minecraft Bedwars. So starting out, a little bit about me. I'm primarily a Rocket League coach. That's the game I come from. I've been a coach for the U.S. Air Force Academy and Auburn University for about the past 4 years, but I've also participated in a bunch of other esports communities and leagues as a coach, player, and staff member. I organized the debut tournament for a pro player who's now in the RLCS, which is really cool. I did that before he had ever competed. It was like his first community event. And a fun fact about me is when I was about 10 years old, I was a semi-pro level at Halo 3, played with some notable pros for that era. And I've been playing Minecraft since it came out pretty much. Came out when I was in middle school. It's definitely a big part of my life. So first things first is what is Minecraft and what is Bedwars? I'm sure all of you have heard of Minecraft, one of the most popular games in the world. But how many of you guys have heard of Bedwars? As with just a show of hands. Cool, cool. Yeah, so just going over that really quickly, it's usually 2 to 4 teams, sometimes more. You're basically fighting over resources, and the goal is to destroy the enemy team's bed because that is what allows them to respawn. Pretty simple game mode, but it has a lot of nuances and can get very, very competitive. So determining what to coach and how players learn. Pretty much every esports title can be broken down into the macro, meso, micro framework. You guys might have heard of that or used that in other industries. But you can break down any esport through those three categories. Macro is going to be your game and map knowledge, your strategies, the state of the game. So big picture stuff, um, stuff that is going to be influenced by the enemy team and your team, every player, the items, the objectives, like the overall state of the game. That's macro. And meso is going to be the human aspect. So how do we react to what the enemy team is doing? How do we adapt? What information can we get through just looking at what they're doing? How are we communicating and coordinating between each other? So that's a big part of a lot of multiplayer esports is the human aspect, um, also called intuition. So how you're kind of reading the game. And then you have your micro, which is going to be your mechanical skill. So this is your actual input, executing different mechanics, skills, things that are apparent in the game. So going into these a little bit deeper, we have the macro, which is the state of the game, the big picture stuff. So the basics, and this can be broken down into like different levels, but the basics is just understanding the objectives and rules of Bed Wars, using basic strategies and teamwork, knowing what resources you need to buy upgrades, just generally how the game is supposed to be played. And then when you go a little bit deeper into that, you'll start paying attention to resource timers. So, for example, we can hop into this little single player world right here, and I'll show you on a Bedwars map. So this is an 8-team map. Each team starts in these little bases. You have this little area back here that will spawn iron and gold, but then you also have 2 other resources, which are emeralds and diamonds, and those are going to be located in different parts of the map. Typically, emeralds are going to be in the center part of the map, and then you'll have these side islands that have diamond generators. These will drop resources in increments of time that get faster, and you'll get more resources as the match goes on. So it's important for players to know when those resources are going to be coming up, when they can go and grab them, and if they can go and grab them as well. Like maybe an enemy team could be attacking your base, and so you can't go and get those resources. But that's just to show how you can get a little bit deeper with it, right? Once we know why we're buying the items we're buying, what upgrades we're buying, we can start developing higher level strategies. And most of the time for Fenworks players, we're just wanting them to get a good grasp of the tier 1 skills. So all of the basics, knowing how to play the game, knowing how to work with their team, why they're doing what they're doing. We're not really wanting to, it's not imperative that we get them to the point where they're pulling off high level mechanical strategies and outplaying the enemy team. That'd be cool, but mostly we're just wanting them to get a good grasp of like teamwork and the basics of how the game functions and why they make the decisions they make. Um, Moving on to the mezzo, which is playing with and against people. One of the top priorities is understanding the Fenworks rules and guidelines and just general gaming etiquette. We want our students to be kind to each other and their opponents and have a good understanding of the rules. So whenever you get new kids in your esports club, make sure you just, uh, you know, make sure that they have a good attitude and demeanor and mindset towards the game and their team and everything. Very important, uh, because I've dealt with a variety of students that uh, are fairly good at the game that they're playing, and then they don't want to listen to their teammates or their coach, and it doesn't lead to a good team environment. So getting everybody on that same page, emotionally, mentally, in that mindset of like collaboration and teamwork is so huge. Um, uh, when it comes to the mezzo aspect of games in Minecraft specifically, you'll have your objectives and player roles. So when you're working with your students, you'll have to observe them and see what position they'd be most comfortable playing. So you might have a student who is very mechanical. You see them play and they're able to like do PvP well. They're able to build efficiently, all that stuff. You're probably going to want to put them in more of an offensive role. And a player who isn't as mechanically savvy, you might want to put them on defense. And there's two ways you can go about that, like putting players into their comfort zones in terms of the roles they play, what spot they're filling on the team, but then also experimenting during practice sessions and stuff with putting them outside of their comfort zones. So taking a player who's not as mechanically inclined and putting them in your offensive role, make them PvP the enemy team, right? Just so they can develop that experience. Um, but a lot of mezzo is just watching the enemy team and doing reconnaissance, getting information. Where is the enemy team on the map? What do they want to do? How do we respond? And a lot of coaching, or I'd say the top priority when it comes to coaching, outside of teaching kids how to play the actual game they're playing, is teaching them how to communicate and coordinate with each other. I've had a lot of teams that don't have like an incredible mechanical ability or an incredible sense of game knowledge, but they work together so well that they end up just outplaying enemy teams because they're just communicating, and it's one of the most important things. So moving on to micro, which is the individual skills. This is your mechanics. So you can see the two images on the right. We have somebody doing what's called ninja bridging, and then another image below that is a team doing a bed rush. And these are just like mechanical examples of like placing blocks quickly and accurately to reach an objective. So micro is going to be your basic understanding of how to move in the game. So running around, jumping, using your tools, throwable objects, using boats, stuff like that. So anything that requires you to press buttons. This also goes into bridging techniques, and you'll start out with just basic bridging, but like the examples I have on the right, you can get more efficient and faster with your block placement. The micro also applies to things like combat. So you'll have different mechanics, like your swing timer and jumping to get a critical hit. These are things that your players might know, and it gets even more in depth. You also have like building under pressure. So if you're in a PvP scenario, having the ability to place blocks behind you as you're running away to block the enemy player from getting to you, stuff like that. So micro is the aspect of gameplay that has the most depth and nuance and levels to it, I'd say. You can have players that genuinely just outclass every other player just because of their mechanical ability. Um, so one way you can test your micro skills or practice your micro skills is by doing a super flat world. This is an example of an ender pearl jump. So I have these blocks placed about 10 blocks apart from each other. And if I were to throw this ender pearl, which is just an item that teleports you wherever you throw it. So wherever it lands, it'll teleport me to that spot. So if I stand on this block and I just throw this forward, I go about 45 blocks, maybe 50 blocks. But if I add a jump and a sprint, and I hold my mouse at a 45-degree angle as I throw this, the distance I can achieve is a lot higher. So instead of clearing 50 blocks, I cleared well over 80 blocks with that one jump. So this just goes to show with a little bit of mechanical knowledge, you can increase the efficiency of what you're trying to do. So yeah, your students might not be aware of these things. They might not be at that level, but it's up to you to show them these examples. And I have some guides at the end of this that I'll show you. But my general advice for coaching Minecraft is that Minecraft as a title is a lot more casual than other esports titles. So give your students some grace. The schools that I've worked with, I've had some students that have played Minecraft a lot. They've played a lot of Bedwars, and they're ridiculously competitive when it comes to that stuff. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, I've had players who are joining esports just as like a social extracurricular thing. They're not really competitive, and they chose Minecraft as the game because it's something that they are familiar with. So you'll have a large dynamic in terms of your students and how they approach the game. So once again, when it comes to that of communication and coordination aspect of it, getting your students on the same page, maybe taking that player who is super competitive down a notch, and then also getting the person who's super casual to take it a little bit more seriously is super, super important, just because the social dynamic on your teams is going to heavily influence how they perform. If you have the super competitive player who is kind of talking down to your other players who maybe don't perform as well, maybe aren't taking it as seriously, that's going to affect the improvement and development of everybody on the team. So yeah, I would say, once again, focusing on that communication and coordination, super, super important. And give your students grace because Minecraft is not your traditional esports title. A lot of students as well, when it comes to Minecraft, they typically come from games that use a controller primarily, and they're not used to mouse and keyboard games. So the first thing I go over with students is adjusting their mouse sensitivity and settings, keybinds, whatever that is, getting them to be more comfortable with their setup. Super, super important. I've had players where I watch their POV and they move their mouse and they're doing 360s. Another big thing is reviewing footage. So you can use things like OBS, Zoom, Teams, Discord, recording players' perspectives and asking them about their decisions, whether it's good or bad. You're basically just wanting them to think about what they're doing and put them in that mindset. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm kind of overheating. In that same vein, asking players about their decision making, whether the outcome is good or bad, basically just wanting them to process their own decisions, getting them to think about the game at a higher level. And alongside that, utilizing knowledge of experienced students. I've had a lot of times in my sessions where a student shows me something or shows me some information about the game that I just wasn't aware of previously, and then I was able to relay that, or they were able to help me relay that to the rest of their teammates. So utilizing the knowledge that your students already have is extremely, extremely helpful if it's there. And then another thing is watching and comparing gameplay of your students with high-level players. So just searching on YouTube gameplay of like Bedwars Grand Finals, um, and seeing how those players uh, move and make decisions mechanically or around the map, just giving yourself and your students insight into how high-level players play the game that you might not have the context for previously. Practice skills and techniques. So helping players identify shortcomings and directing them towards appropriate practice tools. So a lot of students, especially with Minecraft, like I said, it's kind of different than your other esports titles. A lot of students will have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. Once again, if we think about that macro, meso, micro framework, I've had I've had students who struggle with communication specifically, and trying to put them in a role that forces them to communicate to their team to kind of push them out of their comfort zone and also get them to, uh, develop that skill. Um, and that's going to be like the meso aspect. So like that specific player struggled with the meso aspect of the game. Um, there is a server called bedwarspractice.club. It's an awesome resource. It has a lot of cool tools for practicing different Minecraft mechanics. Um, you can also play Bed Wars against other players in this, but as you can see, there's about 20 different uh, little mini games and techniques that you can practice. You can get your students to hop on this server and just experiment with the different mechanics. And as you're observing them, you can kind of get an idea of what they need to work on. So some players are really good at movement and placing blocks and moving quickly, but they might not be so good at PvP or using bow and arrow or other throwable items. So you can use that server to identify the strengths and weaknesses of your players and guide them uh, in the right direction. Um, and then also having a routine and warm up for starting your sessions. Once you've identified what players need to work on, starting the session with 5 to 10 minutes of practice of whatever that is, whether it be PvP or mechanical practice with throwable items or movement, placing blocks, etc. Um, getting that routine and warm up will help put your students in a mindset to improve and to collaborate with each other. But it's also important to develop that consistency and oh, sorry, the word is leaving me. But yeah, um, I can't think of the word. I'm sorry. But anyway, here's some tools and resources. So I showed you guys the super flat world, which is where I did the ender pearl jump. That is super helpful for experimenting with movement. So not only can you do things like your pearl jumping, but you can practice your parkour. So if you wanted to do like a 2 block jump, 1 up, getting players to understand how to move effectively uh, and the limits of how far they can move. So this is a 4 block jump that players are able to make, which I'm not good by any means, but this is just stuff that they can practice in a super flat world. And then I showed you the bedwarspractice.club server. That is the best resource, in my opinion, for practicing mechanics. That server has so many different mini games and options for helping your players. And then Hypixel, mc.hypixel.net is one of the largest multiplayer Minecraft servers right now. They have a Bedwars game mode that is extremely popular. It is the best way to practice Bedwars as a team outside of Fenworks. Um, Going back, actually, one thing I did want to mention is that for the macro aspect, the state of the game. So this is what all of the items do, how much they cost, stuff like that. Fenworks has some unique items and features that differ from other Bedwars servers. So while things like Bedwars Practice.club and the Hypixel Bedwars game mode will be very helpful for just general practice, your students will have to learn the item costs and the different items that are available in the Fenworks version of of Minecraft or of Bedwars. Sorry. Um, in general, also, this guide is very surface level when it comes to the actual mechanics of Minecraft. I've included these two videos, Beginner's Guide to Minecraft PvP and How to Improve at Bed Wars, both by the same YouTuber. I highly recommend watching these uh, as a coach, just so you have more insight um, as to like how your players are learning, what they need to learn and focus on. Um, these are going to be very helpful videos. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for the most part. I can go over some more in-game stuff, but does anybody have any questions at this point? No? Well, once again, just to reiterate, um, as a general manager or someone outside of the esports coaching space, it's going to be difficult to teach your students like higher level game mechanics or like macro, um, which is why I would say focusing on communication and collaboration is going to be the most effective way to improve the development and teamwork of your students. Um, Utilizing external resources like YouTube to give yourself a better idea of the game and higher level gameplay is also a very good resource. Highly recommend using stuff like that. But yeah, I know the session ended up being a little short, but
you have a question? Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so with Rocket League and a lot of the other esports we do, there's like a pretty clear path through like collegiate or pro. With Minecraft being so casual, do you see a lot of that? Like you're coaching collegiate, right? It's like, do you see Minecraft Bed Wars in the collegiate scene at all?
I haven't personally coached Minecraft Bed Wars at the collegiate level. I'd say, in my experience, Bed Wars not being a traditional esport, it's not something that colleges are investing in at the moment. But I could definitely see it becoming something that students can participate in at the collegiate level. But I'm not aware of any collegiate opportunities in terms of Bed Wars at the moment.
Thank you.
Mhm. So, I guess with that, if we have no other questions, um, I guess we can finish up the.
Thank you, Brad.
Let's see. Yeah.
And then I'll just call you back, or I'll have you jump on maybe like 5 minutes before the next one.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for participating, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day.